A reading from Exodus chapter 32. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron, and said to him, "Up, make us gods. Who shall go before us? As for this Moses, the man whom brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." And Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold at their hand, and fashioned it with a graven tool, and made a molten calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day, and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and sacrificed to it, and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.'" Welcome again to the Catholic Pleb podcast. Today I wanted to go over this reading because there was something that really struck me that it's just something fascinating that I was like, I never saw that before. And while we're reading this passage from Exodus, a thought came to me. Here we are in the book of Exodus. We have just come out of the land of Egypt, and the people have had these amazing and wonderful miracles worked before them. And they find themselves waiting for Moses to come down from the mountain because he is speaking to God. And you have these people who build this idol out of gold. And this gold, where does it come from? The gold that they build with the idols comes back from Exodus chapter 12. I'll read that for you right now. "The sons of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked of the Egyptians jewelry of silver and gold, and clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they despoiled the Egyptians." So these golden articles that the Israelites are wearing when Moses is delayed comes from the victory that God gives to the Israelites in Exodus earlier on when they're leaving the Egyptian land. And I found this fascinating because to me this represents the dichotomy of grace and sin. That in grace we receive things that though we participate in the fight, it's a gift from God. And these graces that we give are represented in the gold that the Egyptians give to the Israelites when they leave. So you have these beautiful graces which are given to the people. Then, while in the desert, sin comes. And the Israelites have to give over this grace. They have to surrender the beauty with which God has given them. in order to participate in the action and in order to build this idol. So for me, what I was seeing here was that the reality of sin is that it promises to give us something, but in reality, it is a temptation that robs us of something that we already have. So Satan, when he comes to us and he tempts us, he doesn't just come to us and offer us something good. What he does is he comes to us and offers us something that appears to be good. And in place, what he's actually doing is robbing us of a beauty that we had. So for instance, when we have Aaron and the Israelites making this idol, what is the temptation? Well, the temptation is this. They have no idea what happened to Moses. They've had these miraculous experiences. Moses has been gone for quite some time. And there's fear. And what do? They come together. They bring themselves to Aaron, one of the leaders that have brought them out of Israel. Has brought the Israelites out of Egypt. And they seek to find security in the fear that they have. And that's the sin. The sin is to take and grasp their own lives and have security in it and fashion for themselves a path. And this path is to rely on the culture that enslaved them. I mean, think about this. The Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians. And what they do is they return to what they know, even if it is a culture that enslaved them in Egypt, even if it is a culture that heavily burdened them, while Moses was working out for them with God their freedom. Because things, they got worse before they were better in Egypt. They had to provide for themselves their wheat to make their allotment of bricks, and this caused them much delay, and then they were punished for it because they couldn't meet the quotas, and they suffered. And their freedom that they had to persevere, it cost them something. And this culture that caused them to suffer when they're in the desert with Aaron, they go back to it. They go back to what they know to seek security, which is to return to pagan idols and gods. And Aaron was actually, his trade was to make the graven images. So they come to him, a leader, and they ask for security. And that's the sin. They make for themselves a god. They abandon the God that has worked so much wonders for them so that they can have security and peace. And what actually happens? When Moses comes down, they lose the covenant that God has just made with them. They lose the commandments that he's holding. The security that they sought after, they lose. There's death that comes into the camp because of this, among which are plagues. So that security that they were seeking after, they've lost. The relationship that they had with God before, they've lost. And this perpetuates a spiraling effect of more sins later down the road and actually prevents them from being able to enter into the promised land. But moving on to another example, I wanted to return to something a little bit more old. I want to return to the beginning of Cain and Abel and read to you again how sin steals from us and how it's something that we appear that we are gaining something, but really we are being robbed. So this comes from Genesis chapter 4. Now, Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of the time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruits of the ground, and Abel brought some of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain said to Abel, his brother, "Let us go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive, and a wanderer in the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me this day away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden, and I shall be a fugitive, and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will slay me." Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone slays Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who came upon him should kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So first off, just noting the differences between the sacrifices. It's interesting how Cain's sacrifice really just seems like it's an afterthought. I mean, it says, he brought to the Lord an offering of fruit. Nothing too specific there, just something. While Abel, when he brings his offering, he doesn't just bring an offering, he brings the firstlings of the flock. The first things that that Abel is actually benefiting from his work. The first things he gives to the Lord. And then on top of that, he also offers the fat portions as well. So there appears to be an abundance and a thoughtfulness in the gift of Abel. Meanwhile, Cain is just offering some gifts. And then Cain is angry that his offer is not accepted. And then we get into sin. This provokes him to anger, and the Lord is speaking with him. He's talking with him. And he's warning him that the sin wants him, and he must master it. And immediately after this, he brings his brother out into the field and kills him. So he sees here that he can have his satisfaction, that his anger that he has, he can satisfy it with the cost of his own brother's blood. That is the offer. But what's really happening is he's being robbed, right? He's being robbed of his relationship with his brother. I mean, the first brotherly relationship that he had from Adam and Eve, gone. His relationship with his parents, gone forever. His relationship with the Lord, broken. So we see that Cain sees himself as receiving something from sin, but in reality he's being robbed. And then the last example that I'd like to talk with you is the example of Judas. He sees for himself as gaining the 30 pieces of silver. He sees himself as becoming richer. But the reality is, he loses life itself. And not just the fact that this causes Judas and causes him to actually eventually die, but he loses the way, the truth, and the life. He betrays God and through the guilt can never look at him and ends up killing himself. He sees himself as receiving a reward from sin. He sees himself as gaining, but in reality, he is robbed. I mention these things because a realization came to me that I do not see sin this way. I do not see sin as an opportunity that I may be robbed of something that I have. That the gold that God has given me, that the grace that God has given me, can be taken. I wanted to share this because I find it extremely helpful now that when temptation comes, I can look at Satan and say, what have you come to rob me of today? What is it that you seek that is beautiful that you wish to take? And when I realize that Satan doesn't actually have my best interest at heart, but he's just simply trying to take what I have, I realize that what is being offered is hollow, and that helps fight. It helps me fight. So I hope that is something that helps you guys out and something that you enjoy. If you guys like what I said, please subscribe to the podcast. If this is on YouTube and you're listening to it, please subscribe to the channel. I would very much so appreciate your comments and hearing what you think. And also, as well as just hearing your ideas on these different scriptures and hearing what you have to say. Because this is not just me speaking out into the void, but I really do want to hear the feedback that you guys have. And even if there's things that I can just, improve on just a basic level of podcasting and being a better presenter, then I appreciate that. But God bless you guys, and I'll be praying for you.